Why you keep waiting for permission you'll never get. Nobody is coming to tell you that you're allowed to start. Not your boss, not your parents, not some future version of you who finally feels ready. And the fact that you're still waiting for them is the reason your life hasn't changed in years. There's a version of your life that's been ready for years. It's been sitting there, fully formed, waiting for you to walk into it. You can see it when you're honest with yourself. The business you'd start, the person you'd become, the thing you'd finally say out loud. And every day you don't walk into it, you tell yourself the same quiet lie. Not yet. Not until I'm ready. Not until someone tells me I'm allowed. That someone is never coming. This is the story of why you're still waiting, what you're actually waiting for, and why the moment you stop waiting is the moment your life actually starts. Think about the last time you wanted to do something that mattered. Not something small, something that scared you a little. Change careers, end a relationship that had quietly died years ago. Start the thing you've been talking about since you were 25. What stopped you wasn't a lack of ability. It wasn't even a lack of time, not really. What stopped you was a feeling, a low hum in the background of your mind. That said, who do you think you are? That feeling has a name. Psychologists call it the imposter phenomenon, but that clinical name undersells what it actually is. It's not just self-doubt. It's a belief system, a quiet, deeply held conviction that permission is a real thing that gets handed out by qualified people, and that you are not yet one of the people who's been handed it. So you wait for a credential, a title, a certain number of followers, a certain age, a certain level of savings in the bank. You wait to feel ready, as if readiness is a weather condition that will eventually roll in. If you're patient enough, it won't. And here's the part that stings. You already know that. Somewhere in you, you know that the people who did the thing you want to do didn't wait to feel ready. They did it scared, underqualified, half-formed, and figured out the rest in motion. You know this, and you're still waiting. So the real question isn't whether permission exists. It's why you need it so badly that you'd rather stay stuck than move without it. Let's go back further than your to-do list. Let's go back to childhood, because that's where this pattern was built, brick by brick, long before you had the language to notice it happening. As a kid, permission wasn't a metaphor. It was survival. You needed permission to speak at dinner, to leave the table, to stay up later, to go to your friend's house. And more than the explicit rules, you learned the unspoken ones. Which opinions got you praised, and which ones got you a look. That told you to sit down and be quiet. Carl Jung called this the formation of the persona, the mask we build to be acceptable to the people who control our environment. As children, we don't build that mask because we're weak. We build it because we're small. And the people around us are enormous, and their approval is the difference between safety and danger. The problem is that mask doesn't come off when you turn 18. It calcifies. The part of you that learned to scan a room for approval before acting doesn't retire just because you moved out. It gets promoted. It becomes the voice that scans your business idea for approval before you post it. It becomes the voice that scans your relationship for approval before you leave it. It becomes the voice that scans your own ambition and asks, quietly, who said you could want this? Nobody said you could. That's the part nobody tells you. There is no counsel. There is no gate. There is no moment where a person with more authority than you looks at your life and says, yes, now you may begin. That structure existed when you were a child because you needed adults to keep you alive. It does not exist now. It was never rebuilt into the adult world. You just kept acting as if it was, because that's the only operating system you were ever given. Viktor Frankl spent years in Auschwitz, watching human beings stripped of everything external, their homes, their families, their names, replaced with numbers. And what he found, even there, in the most permissionless environment imaginable, was that the last human, freedom, The one thing that could never be taken was the freedom to choose your response, not your circumstances, your response to them. If that freedom survives a concentration camp, it is absolutely still intact. In your unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, sitting in your car outside a job you hate, telling yourself you're not ready to leave yet. You are not waiting because you lack freedom. You are waiting because freedom is heavier than permission, comes with someone else to blame if it goes wrong. Freedom doesn't. Freedom means if you start the business and it fails, that's yours. If you leave and you're lonely for a while, that's yours too. Waiting for permission isn't really about readiness. It's about outsourcing responsibility for your own life to someone who was never going to show up and take it. This is where Epictetus becomes useful, because he built an entire philosophy around one blunt distinction. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Your reputation, other people's approval, whether the world validates your timing. None of that is up to you, and chasing it is a war you cannot win. But your choice, right now, to act or not act, that has always been entirely up to you. Waiting for permission is, in Epictetus's terms, a category error. You are asking the universe for something it was never designed to give, and using its silence as your excuse. And here's what makes this trap so effective. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels like responsibility. It feels mature. I just want to be prepared. I don't want to rush into anything. I am being smart about this. That voice sounds so reasonable that you rarely question it. But notice something. It never has an end date. There is no point at which the voice says, "Okay, now you're ready." It just moves the goalpost. You get the promotion you thought you needed, and now you need the next one. You hit the savings number, and now the number needs to be higher. You post the video, and it doesn't do numbers. And now you need to learn more before you post again. The goalpost moves, because the goalpost was never the real obstacle. Is that some part of you is safer standing still than it is moving forward exposed. Marcus Aurelius, ruling and empire, wrote to himself in the dark, not for an audience, not for permission from the Senate or the gods. He wrote that you could leave life right now and let that determine what you do and say and think. He wasn't being morbid. He was cutting through exactly this. If your time were visibly finite, and it is, you've just successfully avoided thinking about it. Would you still be waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to start? Or would the waiting suddenly look as absurd as it actually is? Here's the mechanism underneath all of this, so you can see it clearly instead of just feeling it. Every time you wait for permission instead of acting, your brain logs that as evidence. See, this must be dangerous, or I wouldn't have hesitated. The hesitation itself becomes proof that caution was correct. It's a closed loop. Fear creates waiting, reinforces fear, and the longer it runs, the more real the invisible gatekeeper feels, even though he was never anything but a memory of your childhood dining table, projected onto every future decision you'll ever make. Breaking that loop doesn't require confidence. This is the part people get backwards. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to silence the voice. You need exactly one small action taken while the voice is still talking. Not a leap, not quitting your job tomorrow. One main character energy. One message sent. One page written. One conversation you've been avoiding started. The loop doesn't break because you out-argue the fear. It breaks because you act inside it, and nothing bad happens. And your nervous system slowly, reluctantly updates its model of what's actually dangerous. There's a strange kind of grief in realizing no one is coming to give you permission. Some part of you wanted that. Wanted a parent, a mentor, an authority to look at you and say you're allowed. You're enough. Go. And accepting that no one is going to do that means accepting that you are right now, as unfinished and uncertain as you feel, already the authority on your own life. That's not an inspirational poster line. It's closer to a loss. You're losing the fantasy of rescue. But underneath that loss is the only thing that was ever actually going to move you forward. The fact that it was always up to you, and it still is. So look at the thing you've been waiting on. The business, the exit, the conversation, the version of yourself you keep rehearsing in private and never showing anyone. Ask yourself honestly who you're waiting for. A boss, a parent, a partner, an audience, a future version of yourself who somehow feels braver than the one sitting here right now. Name them, and then notice that not one of them is coming to your door today. You don't need permission. You need one action small enough that the voice in your head doesn't have time to organize a defense against it. Do that today, not because you're ready, because readiness was never actually the requirement. It never was.